Welcome to the weekly radio broadcast of the Commonwealth Club of California. I'm Gloria Duffy, President and CEO of the club. The Commonwealth Club is a nonpartisan national forum airing diverse views on important topics of national interest. Today's program was recorded exclusively for the listeners of KLIV AM 1590 in San Jose. Now we join today's program of the Commonwealth Club.
Good evening and welcome to this meeting of the Commonwealth Club of California, the place where you're in the know. I'm Mary Bitterman, President of the Bernard Osher Foundation, past chair of the Commonwealth Club's Board of Governors, and your moderator for tonight's program, underwritten by the Osher Foundation as part of the club's Good Lit series. Find us on the internet at commonwealthclub.org or download our iPhone and Android app for schedule information and to register for programs. We want to pause just for a moment of silence at this time to mark the passing of a remarkable woman, movie star, diplomat, president of the Commonwealth Club, and longtime and dedicated member of the club's Board of Governors, Ambassador Shirley Temple Black. We remember her with great respect and affection. And now on to today's program. Few people can be truly identified as icons, but in the world of television, that's exactly the case with our special guest, Richard Chamberlain. From Dr. Kildare and his lead roles in such powerful miniseries as Centennial, Shogun, and the Thornbirds, as Alexander McCaig, John Blackthorne, and Father Ralph de Bricassar, to Wallenberg, A Hero's Story, the original Bourne Identity, Mad Woman of Chaillot, The Music Lovers, Island Sun, and nearly 50 other titles. Richard Chamberlain has starred in some of the most memorable programs in film and television history. His performances have not only graced the screen, but the stage as well, from a powerful Hamlet and Richard II to a most engaging Henry Higgins and Captain Von Trapp. Richard's work, which has carried him from several years of residence in Britain to performing venues across the world, winning acclaim for his enormous talent and sensitivity. Not one to grow comfortable with stasis, Richard has had starring roles just in the past year in two very well-received plays, The Heiress at the Pasadena Playhouse and The Exorcist at the Geffen Theater in Los Angeles. Were that not sufficient, Richard sings beautifully, plays the piano, paints, serves as an articulate and conscientious environmentalist, and writes. His 2003 memoir, Shattered Love, is a book you will want to read. It's beautifully written and will be on sale after our conversation. As I mentioned earlier, Richard has agreed to sign your books upon completion of the program. I should also like to note that in this past year, he's also written a book entitled My Life in Haiku, a lovely collection of his short poems and drawings. Richard is not just a creative and accomplished performer. He is also an individual who has heeded the words of Socrates. The unexamined life is not worth living. In Shattered Love, he takes measure of his life to date, reflecting on what he has experienced and what he has learned, as well as anticipating ever more meaningful experiences and lessons in the years to come. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome our distinguished guest, Richard Chamberlain. I brought it all the way from Hawaii.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. How beautiful.
I think some of you know that Richard has spent many years living in Hawaii and is really very, very close to being a true keiki o ka'aina, a child of the land. We always say words like, malahini and kama'aina for special designations, but this is a real kama'aina and about as close as you can get to keiki o ka'aina. This isn't our normal procedure. This is the first time in all the conversations I've done at the East-West Center that I've presented a lay. But this is very important to me. When I flew last night from Honolulu back to San Francisco, I carried this lay with me. So it comes with warmest aloha and mahalo nui loa for all your good work in the Hawaii nei.
Thank you so much.
Turn it around so we can see the beautiful flower.
Here, wait a minute. Here. This is, you see, these are just a profusion of orchids.
Hundreds and hundreds of orchids.
I think they want it like this.
Oh, okay. Thank you. It's
Wonderful.
like competition. I don't know.
All right. Well, we have really been looking forward to Richard's coming to the Commonwealth Club. And I want to cover a few things in this wonderful, wonderful book. Richard went to Pomona College, where he studied art and then acting. But I have a serious belief that you did a lot of creative writing and literature, because this is just beautifully written.
Thank you. Thank you. It had never occurred to me in my wildest dreams that I would ever write a book.
So tell us why you did.
Well,
what happened?
Okay. There was a hot editor, publisher named Judith Reagan, who worked with... my mind isn't working at all. Anyway, she was big time, and she called me up, and she wanted me to do it years ago, and wanted me to write a coming out book, and I wasn't at all ready to do that. And then a number of years after that, my dear friend Jocelyn Fujii was up for writing a book for Judith about somebody. And I called Judith to say that I thought Jocelyn was a fabulous writer. And she said, great, I'll take note of that. And what about your book? And I said, well, what about my book? And she said, well, what would you like to write about? And I said, I don't know, life. I've been thinking a lot about life. How about life? And she said, well, send me 5 pages. And I had already written something for somebody else, which was about 5 pages, and I sent it to her. She said, fine, let's do it. And so I thought I was writing a book about life and how we live our lives and how we might do a little better. And then it morphed into other things, too.
But it's very interesting the way you write the book, that as you started off trying to respond to Judith Reagan's request, those closest to you, such as Martin Robin and others, suggested this should really be very personal.
Yes.
It shouldn't just be blah, blah, blah. It should be about you, George Richard Chamberlain, right?
Yes.
And it's just magnificent because the detail that you go into is very moving. And some of you will have to be left in suspense because we only have an hour this evening, and there's so many things that we want to cover with Richard that if you want to know what you really should know, you should get the book. But growing up, in a way, being so successful, so adored, so beloved by audiences all over the world, to think that you would ever have any self-esteem, self-image.
I know, but if you
seems absolutely ludicrous.
But if you listen to interviews with actors, they always start out by, "Oh, I was fat and pimply in school, nobody liked me," and that kind of thing. A lot of actors start from a point of very low esteem and some fear and stuff like that. But they have other qualities too, luckily. But it's very common to start from an unsatisfactory childhood.
So yours, there were problems. I mean, you spoke about in the book very honestly about your father, and at the end of the book, what's lovely is that you've come full circle and realize that love is the most important thing, and that whatever problems occasioned your childhood, you could put into a different perspective toward the end of his life.
Oh, yes. I ended up with a sense of he was rough on not only his two sons, but also his wife.
Oh, definitely.
I mean, he didn't beat us up or anything, but he was a very difficult man to live with, rather huge personality and rather suppressive. And I was extremely angry, partly because I was so frightened of him. And so why not be angry? Because he wasn't what I wanted to be a father. Anyway, I was in the hospital for a reason. I had had a little operation of sorts. And it was at that time that I suddenly realized that there was nothing to forgive. That's what I think forgiveness is, actually, is realizing that there was nothing to forgive. He was who he was. It's like a flame, and you put your hand in it, and it burns, and you don't spend the rest of your life resenting the flame. And you could say, well, but he intended to be hurtful. Well, yes. But that was who he was. He intended to be hurtful. We got hurt a bit. But that's just who he was. And I suddenly was able to not hate him anymore. Because it was just life. It was just who he was. That's what life was then.
The writing of the book, as it is for some people, seems to have been therapeutic.
Oh, very. Well, gosh, you sit down in a blank sheet of paper, and you know that people are depending on you, like publishers, to write a book. And so you start thinking, well, okay, and you start writing, and it's kind of a revelation. It's sort of like painting a picture. You put down a few strokes and a wash and a few lines and things, and then the painting starts to tell you what to do, which is a wonderful feeling. It's a kind of zone you get into when you're painting. And that's what happened with this book, that when different subjects would come up, I'd start writing, and they would start, in a way, to write themselves. So yes, and I discovered a great deal about myself and about life in the process of doing that.
You know, I think so many people would expect, reading a story, a memoir, that given the number of performances, film, television, stage, musicals, everything that Richard Chamberlain has done, that the book would pretty much be a recitation of all of this. But that's probably half. The other half is really about self-knowledge, self-discovery, self-development, and the enormous, focus on love. What we always hear about faith, hope, and love, and the greatest of these is love. Why don't you say something about love? Probably none of you expected this evening that you would come and learn about love. You'd hear something else. But I think it's such an enriching part of this volume.
Yeah. Well, I think there are two aspects of love. I think there's love, the verb, and love, the noun. Love, the verb, is like falling in love. I love you. I love my kids. I love my work. But it's something that's created inside of you with wonderful chemicals and things, especially falling in love, which can be so amazingly exciting. And you can think, that's love, man. But the problem with love, the verb, is that there are expectations. And when you're in love with somebody, you expect them to be a certain way and to be good in bed and all that stuff. But the minute they go to bed with somebody else, love switches around to resentment and sometimes even hate. And there's love, the noun, which I think is maybe, well, first of all, it's independent of us. It can be within us. It can enrich our lives, but it also is fine without us. There's no strings to love the noun. And I think it's probably the root, the basis of everything. I have a feeling that out of this amazing quality of love the noun, which is the home of wisdom, it's the home of strength, it's the home of creativity, it's the home of compassion, that out of that vast, invisible spirit, maybe everything was manifest. So I think love the noun is a very, very big deal. And the great thing about it is it's totally, absolutely free. Completely free and completely available. Look who's here. Hi. And completely available. You just have to open your heart to it. Well, and there it is. I say it again, it's totally free. You don't have to deserve it. You don't have to earn it. You can just invite it in. And I think that's the great thing about love the noun.
And you've gone on, in addition to all of your work as an actor, you have actually participated in a number of seminars and teaching groups and therapy groups and whatnot to try to have people recognize how important love is in their lives and the self-realization.
Myself, I've gone to enrich my own experience. Yeah, I've done a little bit of teaching, but mostly I go to those as a student. And I've been very lucky. I've encountered some wonderful, wonderful, wonderful teachers who have really changed my life. I started out being very frightened with a kind of generalized fear. I had a kind of vision of myself recently as a being filled with a kind of concrete. And I thought about it, and it turned out that this concrete was fear, a kind of generalized fear. And it wasn't always obvious in my life, and I had wonderful successes and things, but there it was. And then thinking more about it, I realized that it could be dissolved by love. What got me started on this? I can't think.
No, because I was asking you about your teaching, and yet you've really done this so much really for your own self-realization and growth.
So it was a teacher called Brew Joy. That was his real name, by the way.
It's rather clever.
who I went to a long retreat with him and a group of about 35 people in 1975 or 6. And his great gift was his relationship to love the noun. It just flowed from him. He was a brilliant doctor. He did a lot of energy work on people without touching, and this love would flow. Anyway, it was during the course of that 17 days, that I suddenly at last felt my heart open up a little bit, because it had been so closed with a strange kind of concrete fear, which was subtle, but there it was. Anyway, that was an immensely enriching experience for me.
You know, one thing I've always wondered, and we have someone this evening who says, I don't have a question or a comment. It's just an observation that you must know that you have fans all across the world. And this individual's from Singapore, and this person's a fan. So
thank you.
It seemed to me that the filming of Shogun and being in Japan seems to have had some lasting effect on you. I mean, when I think about the fact, as I mentioned to the audience, that just in the past year and a half, Richard has done this wonderful book on haiku. Does that stem from this influence of 30 years ago of being resident in Japan for that filming and obviously learning a great deal, studying a great deal about the Japanese culture? Somewhat.
I've always been very, very attracted to Japanese art. Not so much the poetry, that I hadn't read that much of it, though I had been very interested in the haiku poems that I had read. But yes, that experience, there was so much about Japan that Americans didn't know in the book by James Clavell. It was rich, rich, rich in Japanese history and philosophy. And it was lovely being immersed in all that and being in Japan for 6.5 months. We were 10 weeks in Kyoto, and we had weekends off, which is very unusual when you're filming on location. And I got to go all over Kyoto, for instance, and see everything. And yeah, I was deeply, deeply impressed by the Japanese sensibility, which is so, so different from the American sensibility.
And you had the opportunity to, I mean, you've worked with so many interesting people, but Mifune had to be a kind of special.
Mifune-san was just amazing. He's the sort of Japanese Laurence Olivier, this great, great Japanese actor. And when he was in his Western outfit, he was very diffident and rather quiet. And so, but man, you got him in those samurai clothes. And suddenly there was this force. You wouldn't dare approach him, really, I'm not kidding, or talk to him. And yet, a couple of times he did things like, he noticed that my grass sandals were tied the wrong way. And he was, in this mode. And he started to laugh, and he got down on his knees and retied my sandals. And I thought, it's like having your sandals retied by God. It was just amazing.
Or your feet washed by the Pope or something.
Yes.
Exactly. That's really wonderful. I think perhaps we should take advantage of this spectacular opportunity that we have with Richard right here to see if he might read a haiku or two from this lovely book, which has not only, I think it's 152 haiku that he's written, but some lovely drawings of his as well.
I just wrote one that I rather like. It goes like this. There are other ways than this eternal searching. Stop right here and see. And I really like that. I marked a few here that I kind of like. There are some clunkers in here too, but
this is a product of all of Richard's studying and self-knowledge that he can be.
Okay, here's one rich in study and self-knowledge. Just a second. Where did I go? Oh, why don't her big breasts, bobbing as she walks along, tip her right over?
And something equally profound?
Let's see what we've got here. Oh, here's another deadly serious one. Huge calamity, thundering beyond the rest. I'm losing my hair. But I'm sure there's a more serious one.
When you see some advertisements for hair growth, I'm sure there would be people who would take that very seriously.
Okay, here's one. Why do we want more than this eternal moment? Bliss is hiding here. So that's
really beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. So we have so many questions from the audience, and I'm going to raise a few of them, but I'm going to make sure that you have all of the questions so that at your leisure you can go through them, because they cover many, many different points. What experience has had the most impact on your life? Is there some experience you've had that has just sort of changed a great many things?
Well, there are personal things, experiences that I could bring up, but one was I always really wanted to be an actor. I didn't like real life. I hated going to school when I was a kid. And I loved going to the movies, and I thought, that's where I want to live. I want to live up there on that screen. I want to be an actor and live this fantasy life. I don't want to be myself particularly. I certainly don't want to go to school. I want to be up there on the screen. But I was very shy and very inhibited. And I was in plays in high school, but stiff and scared. And I was in a lot of plays at Pomona College. In fact, I was an art major, but I sort of moonlighted in the drama department. And I did okay, but mostly I was pretty scared and pretty inhibited on the stage. And then the senior year, I played Blunchley in Shaw's Arms and the Man, and somehow took off. I mean, this is in a collegiate sense, but I just took off in this part, and I really did it, and I threw my whole self into it, and the audience really, really loved it. And he has this great exit speech, and I did that exit speech and walked off the stage and just stopped the show cold. It was they loved it, and I thought, oh yes, this is what I can do. And I threw art out the window and decided to become an actor. That was very key to my life.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. So who did you admire most as you were growing up in the world of theater and acting? Was there someone who particularly you said, I want to be a great actor like so-and-so?
I had some recordings in high school of John Gielgud and Pamela Brown in The Ladies Not for Burning. And I thought his performance, first of all, I fell totally in love with that play. And I thought his performance was just sensational. And I thought, I want to do that too. I want to be a stage actor. I want to do the classics. I want to do all those things. That's the first person to leap into my mind.
You're listening to a broadcast of the Commonwealth Club of California. Become a member of the Commonwealth Club and support the club and its radio broadcast by visiting www.commonwealthclub.org or by calling toll-free 1-800-933-7548. That's 800-933-7548 or commonwealthclub.org.
Oh, wonderful. Of course, and I'm sure this question is asked of you on multiple occasions, and it must be a question that's difficult to answer because you've done so many performances and you've done them with a lot of different people. It'd probably be easier if you had just acted on screen and stage with the same 5 people, and then it'd be much easier. But people are always curious as to who would you count on a short list of the most brilliant actors with whom you performed?
Oh, well, John Gielgud, he played the ghost in a version of Hamlet I did.
Yeah.
A dear friend of mine, Margaret Leighton, whom you may not know.
No, my goodness, yes.
Who acted really bad. Anthony Hopkins. Fabulous.
Yeah.
An actor who's just come on the scene, as far as I know, recently is Benedict Cumberbatch. I think he's really terrific. And Joaquin Phoenix has just done a performance in a movie called Her that I found dazzling, absolutely dazzling. So there are a few.
All right. I'm going to change pace just a little bit. Have you had political aspirations?
I would be the worst politician that ever walked the earth. I don't know how to do all that stuff. I would hope to be reasonably honest, which is really difficult for a politician. And I haven't... Well, my astrological chart, for instance, has no planets in anything like an Earth sign. There's no Earth in my chart at all. I'm totally disorganized. I'm totally impractical. And no, the answer to the question is no.
All right. Well, I think some people are going to be quite unhappy. They were thinking of this as perhaps a new chapter. One person noted being obviously a student of your curriculum vitae, that March 31st is an important date.
Birthday. Yes.
Big birthday.
I'm going to be 27.
Isn't that absolutely wonderful?
No, I'm going to be 80. I'm going to be 80.
You know, if you go online and capture the haiku by Richard, you will hear him sing, "Love Makes the World Go Round."
Oh.
And I began listening to it, and for the last 4 nights, it's with me all the time. It's incredible. You have an absolutely beautiful, beautiful voice, and I think it would be great if you did more singing.
Well,
Maybe you could go across the street to the church.
Oh, I could sing
with
in the
some
church.
choir work.
Yeah, well, I could do that.
I think that would be...
I don't think I will, but I could.
But see, I'm not even making this up. This is someone in the audience who wonders if you might sing "Three Stars Will Shine Tonight," the Dr. Kildare theme.
Well...
But you don't have to. I mean, you're not... Thraldom was outlawed a long time ago, so you are a free agent. But I want you to know how much people care about
great.
you
That's
and
great.
all that you've done.
We had a beautiful theme song, and I was doing some recordings for the studio, MGM, and they wrote lyrics for the theme song, and I did record it. I'm not going to sing it tonight, partly because I don't remember all the words, but funnily enough, I just came across an ancient copy of the sheet music for it with my picture on the front and stuff.
How fun.
And I was looking at the lyrics and I thought, oh, this is really quite pretty, because I'd forgotten them mostly. But no, I'm not vocally fit to sing tonight.
All right. But maybe it's something you would like to record
Again.
Exactly.
Well, why not?
And so whoever raised the question, just keep going online to Richard's website and find out whether or not he's done as you request. This is really wonderful. The last conversation I did here at the Commonwealth Club I did with an old colleague and friend, Rebecca Eaton, who's the executive producer of Masterpiece.
Oh, whoa.
And in announcing upcoming programs, I announced the upcoming program with Richard Chamberlain. And almost everybody in the group said that if the people at Downton Abbey had a brain, they would immediately approach you for season 5.
Oh, please. Please. I would kill to be on that show. I would kill to do it.
I think we're going to get a petition and get it off to Julian Fellows. This is just because here it comes up again and again and again. There are a large number of people in the audience whose lives were enhanced enormously by the filming of the Thornbirds, thinking that it was such a powerful story and that you, as Father Ralph de Bricassar, were as exciting and romantic and difficult and complicated and complex as any human being might sort out to be. Was the filming of the Thornbirds as romantic as it seemed?
Well, yes, it was amazing because it was such a wonderful cast, and Rachel and I got on really, really well and really trusted each other. We had a lot of love scenes and stuff to do that were, she was very beautiful and very good, but on some level, we really trusted each other, so it was thrilling to do those scenes with her. And Barbara Stanwyck and everybody, it was...
And Jean Simmons.
And Jean Simmons.
You had some wonderful interactions with her.
She was wonderful. Gosh. In fact, she was so good that she scared me a little bit. And Barbara Stanwyck didn't, though she was impeccable and marvelous. But there was something about Jean that goes very deep with Jean Simmons. And it scared me a little bit. And I remember one scene, I kept blowing my lines with her and a couple of other characters. And I got so angry with myself that the dolly that moves the camera around has a little seat, a little padded seat. Mm-hmm. I went, oh. and smashed my hand into this seat, which I expected to be soft, and there was an iron bar in it. And I literally broke this hand. But no, that's a side story. But Jean, it's a fabulous, fabulous experience. I had an interesting, I'm not Catholic, and I'm...
Well, they certainly like to put you in religious clothing.
Yes, they do.
I mean, recently you've been a priest again.
Yes, I was a priest again.
With Kathleen Turner.
But I had an experience where I was inducting my son, whom I didn't know was a son, as a priest, and he was flat, you know, how they prostrate themselves on the floor, and I was in all this regalia, and in this beautiful church downtown, which was supposed to be the Vatican. And I had learned the lines of these religious words very carefully, and I started to say them in rehearsal with everything was all set, and I suddenly, something happened, and I had to stop and say, "Ooh, I don't know, something just blew my mind." And Terry Sweeney, who was a young Jesuit who was our technical advisor, was standing by. And I said to Terry, "This is powerful stuff, isn't it?" And he said... So I pulled myself together and was able to get through the scene. But the actual incantations and stuff were powerful beyond anything I had realized or expected. It was an amazing experience.
Where was it filmed?
Well, we filmed mostly in Los Angeles for scenes that were supposed to be Rome. But Dragida was in Simi Valley the whole time. We never did go to Australia. We did film a couple of weeks in Maui for the sugarcane cutting scenes and all that. I mean Kauai. What did I say?
Maui.
Oh, Kauai. Yeah.
Fantastic. Just fantastic. What about Centennial?
Oh, that was practically my favorite part ever. I loved McKeag. I played this Scots fur trapper in the very early history of America. And he was such a neat guy. I mean, he was totally capable of living on the frontier and doing all this stuff and killing these beavers and, I don't know, all this stuff that the real big guys did on the frontier in America. And he was totally capable of all that. And yet he was so sensitive and honest and feeling and loving to Clay Basket, this Indian he fell in love with. I just thought he was a terrific person, somebody I would really like to be.
What about Wallenberg?
Oh, Wallenberg, astounding. What a man. What a man.
We have a school here in San Francisco named after him.
Yes.
And I think just across the country and across the world. I mean, such an extraordinary story, and you played that role so magnificently.
I loved playing him. I loved being in his shoes. He was an amazing man. You know, he once went to see the Scarlet Pimpernel with his sister in Sweden. Was he Swedish? Yeah. And when they came out, he was so impressed by what the Scarlet Pimpernel achieved. And he said, "Oh, God, I'd love to do something like that." He said to his sister, before his involvement.
With the Hungarian Jews.
Yeah, with the Jews in the war. And then he proceeded to sort of fake his way against the Germans as a very high-powered Swedish diplomat to save maybe 100,000 Jewish people through sheer chutzpah, if I may use the word, and was a brilliant actor in doing all that. And completely selfless, and then was arrested by the Russians when they invaded and taken back to Russia as possibly a spy or something, and never heard of again. So he never reaped the fruits of his amazing endeavors.
Yeah. But just fantastic acting in that. You know, there are people who have described the book as, and as you mentioned at the very start, that Judith Reagan herself was saying, this is a coming out book. There's actually, it seems to me, not a great deal about coming out. You say a few words about that.
Well, it was writing this book. Growing up gay in the 30s, 40s, and 50s was not the thing to do. It was verboten. It was impossible. It was not an option at all. So I decided to be somebody else, like straight, and lived an enormous amount of my life pretending to be somebody else, which isn't the ideal way to live, if you've ever thought about it. It's not it's not a good idea to live your life that way. So, but through osmosis, because my family, my friends, everybody in my society that I was aware of thought that being gay was impossible and horrible and ghastly. And so you absorb that. I absorbed it. And I thought that about myself, that there was something terribly, fundamentally wrong with me. And even being famous and successful and all that didn't really quell that. And being in a wonderful relationship didn't really quell that sense of deep self-disapproval. And it wasn't until I was in my little room in Hawaii writing this book, and maybe even this subject, maybe this chapter of should I talk about being gay or not talk about being gay in this book, that it was almost as if an angel entered the room. I know this is going to make me cry. And just put her hand on my head and said, it's over. All that is over. All that is such total, if you'll pardon the expression, bullshit. That it's probably the most boring fact about you. There's nothing, absolutely, it's a totally benign fact. Absolutely without meaning except to you and whomever you're relating to. It's a non-issue. And I suddenly realized this deep into my heart and bones. It wasn't just an idea. It was a genuine realization and a sense of amazing relief and freedom. But I was 68 at that time. So I had carried this burden around.
A mere slip of a boy.
Yeah, a mere slip of a boy. But I had carried around, yes, I'd carried this burden around for no reason for all those years and was suddenly free of it. And that was a marvelous, marvelous experience.
Well, what some people have said is that, you've been such a model, even though you don't know them and they've never had a chance to meet you, of somebody who has dealt with this issue in such a sensitive, straightforward, clear-headed,
well, the great thing was,
way.
During my career as a leading man, it would have been horrible for my career if this had come out during those salad days. I keep losing my track of my...
Well, it's pretty emotional. I mean, here you were, the heartthrob of women across the world.
Yes.
And so coming...
Oh, I know what I was about to say, is that I was suddenly found myself... I had this terrible fear of being outed, and having my career go, which was my life, washed down the drain. And suddenly, when this book was published, which was shortly after this realization, I was on Larry King, I was on all these shows during selling the book, and all they wanted to talk about was being gay in Hollywood, and I was fine with that. I could speak about all that with no fear.
Katie Couric and Bill O'Reilly.
And Bill O'Reilly was actually terrific. I didn't want to do him because he scared me. Martin talked me into it. And it was maybe the best interview of all. Because he said, after he talked about, well, you were an icon and you and Rock Hudson and blah, 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 he said, now tell me about the book. What's it about? And I had a couple of minutes, which is a long time on those kinds of shows.
Yes, they tend to be brief.
To talk about love. And would it be possible to live one's life open-heartedly, no matter all the time, no matter what life throws at you. That, I thought, was the central question of the book. And I got to talk about all that on Bill O'Reilly, and he was terrific, thanks to you.
Thanks to Martin. All right. Now, we have gone from these this is, I think, a very nice question, whoever raised it. Have you ever considered stand-up comedy?
I think stand-up comedians are gods, practically. I can't imagine how they do it. It's extraordinary. I've seen great ones at the top of their game, and they control the crowd. I cannot. The sense of power must be amazing because they have total control of the crowd, and they're brilliant, and they remember all that stuff. And I couldn't possibly do it. No. But I admire them tremendously.
Now, you've done so many different things. I mean, you've done theater and some very serious things. You've done some more lighthearted things. Is it the diversity which appeals to you?
Yes. I think an actor is
you can do My Fair Lady and you can do Hamlet. You can do...
To do everything, I think,
Shogun,
is the fun of it, and to not get stuck in a typecast. When Kildare was over, I'm sure the public wanted more Kildare.
Yes.
And one of the first things I did a picture with Richard Lester in San Francisco called Petulia, and played a very neurotic guy.
With Julie Christie.
Yeah, I got to beat up Julie Christie. It was something. And then I went to England and to study, but I started working in England and playing all these different things, and that's what I always wanted to do, to continually be surprising, both to myself and to the audience.
You did so well in Britain, and here one of your early sort of heroes, Sir John Gielgud, but obviously you knew Laurence Olivier and other...
No, I met him once.
Oh, okay. But you did so well in Britain and were so well received and lived there for several years. Was it difficult deciding to come back to the U.S.? I mean, was there any tension there in your thinking about staying or returning here?
Yes. I loved my life there. I had wonderful friends. The work was just fabulous. And it was my first time kind of living abroad in a whole different culture. We all speak the same language, sort of. But the cultural difference is really wonderful and enriching. And I, for a while, thought, this is probably my home for life. But then I had sort of, living with it, acquired a kind of phony British accent. And it wasn't quite that bad, but I remember having an interview after about 4.5 years there with an American producer who wanted me maybe for a film. And he said, do you think you can still play American parts? And I thought, it's time to go home. Pardon me. Also, thank you. There was a quality of... I was very at home in England because, pardon me, I just swallowed some water down the wrong tube.
So we're not going to ask you to sing.
Yes. But there's I had a wonderful family there that I felt a part of, and wonderful friends and wonderful work. But and everybody was very friendly and stuff. But it was like being a guest at a club to which I would never quite belong. And for those two reasons, I thought it's time to go home. Mm-hmm. And I'm glad I did.
Well, about your time in Hawaii, I mean, people have great aloha for Richard Chamberlain in Hawaii, and wish that Island Sun had gone on forever, and hope that you will return, if not to live there permanently, to continue to return on a frequent
undoubtedly,
basis.
Undoubtedly.
But there's one thing in the book, which is very interesting, that is your interactions with a very remarkable woman, Nana Viri. And this extraordinary woman in Hawaiian culture decided to give both you and Martin names, and she gave Martin this wonderful long name which begins with Moani, and it's just perfect. It's absolutely beautiful, and I wish I could find it this moment, which I can't, but it's something like, the grace of the sea coming together with the beauty of the mountain in one entity, Martin,
Yes,
right?
yes.
And so that's Moani, and that's to whom this book is dedicated.
And when she gave the name, there was this long ceremony. We had to get up at dawn, and he had to eat this very, very special fish which had been cooked in tea leaves and things that only the ali'i had been able to eat before. And then it was cast out into the sea. And if the waves brought it back, it was the wrong name. And if they took it out to sea, it was the right name. And it took it out to sea. Well, this was a big deal with Nana and everything. I thought, wow, that's great. And I thought, oh, Nana, I didn't say it at this moment, but shortly after that, I want a name too. And so she thought for a minute and she said, Nehoa, is that right?
Nohea.
Nohea. I always get those mixed up.
Yeah.
I lived on Nehoa, and it's
Nehoa Street.
Nehoa
Yeah,
Street.
exactly. But this was Nohea. So
and I was disappointed because I thought it just meant handsome.
Well, but here's what I wanted to share with all of you before you read Richard's book, because in the book he'll say that he was a little disappointed.
Yes, I was.
That it was that he was
jealous.
very, very handsome. But then it went on, and she mentioned, and you learned that it also meant generous, right?
That made it feel better.
Okay, and then as I was reading it, I said, the name Nohea is very, very special, actually. And so I did a little more work in my Mary Kavena Pukui, who was another great Hawaiian authority. And so I want you all to know that people with the name Nohea have a deep inner desire to create and express themselves, often in public speaking, acting, writing, and singing. They also yearn to have beauty around them. It seems to me the name is absolutely perfect.
Well,
so it can be, instead of George Richard Chamberlain, it can be Richard Nohea Chamberlain going forward.
Yes.
Don't you think?
Yes. Okay.
I think it's fantastic. All right. So you've noted in the book and elsewhere that you're actually a very tidy person. Are you very neat? I mean, to write haiku, you have to have a certain discipline.
Yes, you do.
Of thinking.
Yes, you do.
So you bring that.
I have become fairly neat. My office is beside the point. That's a place of chaos. But the rest of the house and stuff, and yeah, I'm reasonably neat.
And has that always been?
And I make my bed every day.
Oh. I wonder if any of this was your religious training. It just seems to me that at least 3 times that I know of, you've been in priestly costume. Because in The Exorcist, Father Marin.
Yeah.
Then you're in with this new film with Kathleen Turner.
Yeah.
And then you're Father Ralph.
Yeah.
I don't know about other religious affiliations.
It's all the ones I can think of at the moment, but that's a lot. Three
yeah,
priests is a lot.
It's pretty serious. The things, when you write in the book, and you've expressed this evening that despite the fame, if you go online and just put in Richard Chamberlain, you're going to find yourself taken off into 100 different worlds, depending on if it's a given film, if it's a given play, if it's when you were with a theater production traveling across this country or traveling abroad. I mean, the Germans have a huge amount of pagination on you. But then you talk about some of these insecurities, feeling not as good about yourself as you'd like to. Several people have raised this question, and maybe they want a little bit more than that writing the book. What has helped you to overcome the insecurities that you felt for such a long time? Is it the opening of yourself to just a larger world of thought?
I've lived an incredibly fortunate life. I've had incredible good luck. One of the areas of good luck is in friends. And another is in teachers like Carolyn Conger and Brujoy and David Spangler, who, I don't know, somehow came into my life and were so wonderful and so wise, and friends who were not only fascinating and appreciative, but also able to say, oh, come off it. You know, when I was, I don't know, out of line. And also, I have to hand it to my father, who was big friends with Ernest Holmes, who started the Church of Religious Science. And Holmes was a really powerful guy, a really deep, powerful guy. And my father used to take me to hear him on Sundays in Beverly Hills at a movie theater that I often saw movies at. And the stuff Ernest said, I didn't really know what he was talking about, but I thought, that sounds true. I don't quite know what it means, but it sounds true. And so that got me started in the kind of what's called metaphysics, that Nana was so interested in, for instance, Nana Very. And it stuck. And then I was extremely unhappy in my early 20s, and my singing teacher turned me on to a psychologist who was a devotee of J. Krishnamurti.
Oh, yes, because you mentioned Krishnamurti often in the book.
And so I read his stuff voraciously, also knowing he was speaking truth, and not having any idea how to incorporate that into my life. But I knew it was true. And so there was something in me that recognized truth long before I was able to, in any way, glimpse living it. But it hangs, and enriching things would happen. And so I've come really a long way from where I was, which is not to claim enlightenment or anything like that. But in relation to where I started, I've really come a long way. And it's through sheer good fortune.
Well,
and a certain amount of attention on my part.
I can't believe how quickly this hour has gone. We are so grateful to you, Richard, for coming and spending this time with us. It's not only our gratitude, but I must say, mahalo nui loa. To Richard Chamberlain, the author of the memoir Shattered Love, we thank our audiences here and on radio, television, and the internet. Tonight's program has been part of the club's Good Lit series, underwritten by the Bernard Osher Foundation. We remind everyone that copies of Mr. Chamberlain's book are on sale in the lobby, and he'll be pleased to sign copies outside this room immediately following the program. We would very much appreciate your letting him make his way to the signing table as quickly as possible. I'm Mary Bitterman, and now this meeting of the Commonwealth Club of California, the place where you're in the know, is adjourned. Aloha.
You've been listening to the weekly broadcast of the Commonwealth Club of California. I'm Gloria Duffy, President and CEO of the club. Today's program was recorded exclusively for the listeners of KLIV AM 1590 in San Jose. The Commonwealth Club is a nonprofit, nonpartisan forum airing diverse viewpoints on important topics. If you'd like to join the Commonwealth Club or purchase a CD of this program, call 1-800-933-7548 or visit www.commonwealthclub.org. That's 800-933-7548 or commonwealthclub.org. Please join us again next week for another outstanding program from the Commonwealth Club of California.